His rule over Cicero was absolute. But one man dared to speak out against him, a young newspaper editor called Robert St. John.
My newspaper was dedicated to driving Scarface Al Capone out of Cicero. As I was going to my office early one morning, a big black touring car came roaring up. The car screeched to a stop. 4 men jumped out. At first I didn't know whether they were plainclothes detectives or gangsters, but I then recognized Ralph Capone as one of them, and so I knew. I fell to the ground and curled myself up in a ball because I knew what was about to happen.
St. John suffered a bloody beating.
I was some days in the hospital. When I went to pay my bill, the hospital cashier said, "Oh, your bill was paid this morning." And I said, "Oh, that can't be. Who paid it?" She said, "A man came in, and I said, 'Describe the man.' Well, she said the only thing that was unusual about him is he had a scar on his left cheek. Of course, it was Scarface Al Capone. He had paid my bill."
Violence and charity, Capone's double game. What he could not intimidate, he would buy. When St. John persisted, Capone bought the Cicero Tribune. He left its editor only one option.
I gathered up a few things from my desk, and I put on my hat and coat, and I left my office, never to return. I've never been back to Cicero since.
Walter Trohan was on a story when he visited one of Chicago's police station houses.
I went up to the stairway and I was frisked by 2 men who halted me, took me, and felt to see if I had any revolvers, and I was indignant. I was a reporter. I was an important person, in my own opinion. And I went to the police captain and protested at the Harrison. I said, "You're goons," I guess, words to that effect, frisked me as I was going up to the station. And the captain looked at me and said, "Those weren't my men. Those were Capone's bodyguards," which was an astounding thing to me, and I reported it. The fact that Capone not only went into the station, but his bodyguards frisked everybody who went up to be sure they weren't carrying a gun to shoot Capone.
Capone faced many assassination attempts. He always got away. By 1926, Capone had manipulated the Prohibition law, the gangs, and the police. All that was left was public opinion. He rarely let photographers take the scarred side of his face. The Prohibition Act had proved that a good image was a great cover for bad behavior. Prohibition made Capone an emperor. He ruled from his new palace, the Metropole Hotel in central Chicago. A little Caesar, his reign over the city had crossed national divides. It conquered and united disparate European communities. Prohibition had elevated Capone to wealth and respect. The outlawing of alcohol had taken him to the top. Just as Ford made Detroit, Capone made Chicago. He ate the industrialist. He employed the city.
When I came to Chicago, I had only $40 in my pocket. I went into business that was open and didn't do anybody any harm. Hundreds of young men, thanks to me, are getting from $150 to $200 a week.
He would go about in public and people would cheer, their benevolent city father. They would happily wave at the murderer. Capone courted their support. Tony Berardi covered the races for the Chicago Evening News.
Now, I used to like to bet a few dollars on a horse, and Al Capone and his bodyguards are walking by, and he says, "Hey, kid, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing okay, because I made a few dollars." He says, "Why don't you bet on number 6? Now, I'm a racing form horse bettor. I looked at the racing form, and the horse that he mentioned, he only mentioned it by number. I looked at him, and he was a steeple horse. I said, "Oh my God, how the hell can he win this race?" Well, in a horse race language, he opened up at 99-1, and then he was going down, and he went down to about the 60-1, and one of his bodyguards stuck a ticket in my pocket and walked away. I look at the ticket, and it's $5 win ticket on this number 6. Sure enough, number 6 won by a half a block. Paid. Well, I got $322 for my for that $5.
A year into the Depression, Capone was still playing nice guy, setting up soup kitchens for the poor.
Al Capone's soup kitchen to feed the hungry during the Depression took place on the eve of his conviction for income tax evasion. It was clear that he was trying to influence public opinion in his favor by doing this apparently generous act, because the people he were feeding were just the kind of people who were about to convict him and send him to jail. It didn't work, but it was a brilliant publicity ploy.